Have you ever been the most giving person in the room and somehow ended up with the least? You gave your time, your energy, your loyalty. You were the first to show up and the last to ask for anything back. You helped when no one else would. You stayed when leaving would have been easier. You gave and gave and gave because that is what good people do. And the people you gave to, they are further ahead than you. Not because they worked harder, not because they deserved it more, because while you were being kind, they were being strategic, and you never knew the difference until it was too late. Here is the truth that will rearrange everything you thought you understood about generosity. Kindness is not a virtue, not by itself, not without intelligence behind it. Kindness without strategy is not goodness, it is exposure. It is the open gate of a fortress that has yet to understand it is under siege. Niccolo Machiavelli wrote it plainly in chapter 16 of The Prince, a sentence so dangerous that 5 centuries of teachers, parents, and preachers have quietly refused to repeat it. Nothing disappears so rapidly as generosity. Even while you exercise it, you lose the power to do so. Now, before you hear that and think this is a lesson in coldness, stop, because that is the misdirection. That is the trap inside the trap. This is not a video about becoming someone who does not give. This is a video about understanding what giving actually does. Why the most powerful figures in all of recorded history used kindness as their sharpest instrument. Why the people who appear the most generous are often the most strategic. And why the person who gives without awareness, who opens their hands to every room, every relationship, every request, ends up empty, diminished, and still wondering why. 9 laws. By Law 9, you will not see a single act of kindness the same way again. Not one that is given to you, not one that you give. Subscribe now and turn on notifications, because what follows this episode takes everything here further, and you cannot afford to miss it. Now, let us begin where Machiavelli began, with the man who gave everything and lost it all. Most people will hear this and move on. A few will recognize themselves in it. Because this channel is not built for passive listeners. It's built for people who are tired of being controlled by emotion, distraction, and weakness. So subscribe and turn on notifications. Not for entertainment, for recalibration. Every video in this series is designed to sharpen the way you think, move, observe, and respond under pressure. While most people chase attention, you'll learn how power actually works beneath the surface, quietly, strategically, without needing validation from the crowd. If you're ready to stop reacting and start seeing the game clearly, stay with Victory Loop, because the deeper you go, the less the world will be able to manipulate you. Law 1. Kindness is never free. Every act of kindness is a transaction. The currency is invisible. The exchange is never announced, but it happens every single time, whether the giver knows it or not, whether the receiver admits it or not. There is no free kindness. There is only kindness whose price has not been named yet. The reactive man hears this and recoils. He says, "That is cynical. That is not how I give. I give from genuine care. I expect nothing in return. My kindness is unconditional." And he will be broke by it, not financially completely, of energy, of time, of the resources that could have built something if they had not been distributed to everyone who looked like they needed them. The strategic man hears this and leans forward. He says, "If every act of kindness creates an exchange, what is the exchange I am creating? Who is receiving it? What does it build between us? And what happens when the price is eventually named?" He is not colder, he is more awake. Now, apply this across 2 contexts. At work, the reactive person is the one who always says yes, who volunteers before being asked, who gives their expertise freely to anyone who requests it, colleagues, superiors, even competitors within the same organization. Their generosity is visible. Their value is clear. And when the promotion comes, someone else receives it. Because the reactive person made themselves too available to be considered scarce. In economics, what is abundant has no price. They gave away their scarcity. In relationships, the reactive person gives love unconditionally and completely, without calibration, without measure, without the awareness that unconditional giving sustained over time trains the receiver to stop valuing what they receive. The partner who never withdraws, the friend who never says no, the family member who absorbs every demand without resistance. They are loved. They are also quietly taken for granted, because nothing that costs nothing is protected. Julius Caesar understood this with surgical precision. He was known across Rome as the most generous man in the city. He gave lavish gladiatorial games. He funded public works. He paid his soldiers above the standard rate. He was celebrated, adored, and trusted by the people with a depth of loyalty that his enemies could not manufacture regardless of what they offered. But here is what the historical record reveals that the mythology obscures. Caesar established his rule over Rome by cultivating a reputation for generosity, but his generosity was never random. It was architecturally precise. Every gift was directed at a specific group whose loyalty he needed at a specific stage of his ascent. Every game, every payment, every public act of giving was mapped against a political objective.
He did not give because he could not help himself. He gave because he understood what giving built. That is not selfishness disguised as generosity. That is the highest form of strategic intelligence, understanding that how you deploy resources determines what those resources construct. In the modern world, Amazon Prime. When Amazon first offered Prime membership, they gave away something that seemed like pure generosity. Faster shipping, no minimum order, unlimited access. People received it as a gift. They felt valued. They felt seen. And then, gradually, without announcement, something changed in their behavior. They stopped price comparing. They stopped looking elsewhere. They defaulted to Amazon the way you default to a trusted friend, automatically, without evaluation. The gift had created a behavioral architecture that the receiver did not notice being built around them. That is not luck. That is strategy delivered in the language of kindness. Think about the last time someone gave you something, a favor, an offer, an act of warmth, and you felt, afterward, a subtle but unmistakable sense of obligation, a pull, a feeling that you owed something even though nothing was said. That feeling is the invisible price of the transaction being named by your nervous system before your conscious mind caught up. Machiavelli wrote, "A prince who gives away his own property will eventually have nothing left to give, and then will be compelled to take from the people, turning love into hatred." The giver who empties himself does not become noble, he becomes desperate, and desperation dressed as generosity is the most expensive performance a person can stage.
Law 2. The Trap of the Open Hand. There is a specific kind of person who cannot close their hand. Not because they are weak, because they were told by every authority they ever trusted that the open hand is the sign of the good person, that giving freely is the highest expression of character, that the one who holds back is lesser than the one who pours out. They believed it. They built their identity on it. And now they are exhausted, resentful, and confused because the world did not reward the open hand the way they were promised. Machiavelli's insight is precise. Generosity is seductive and strategically suicidal when unchecked. A prince who tries to be loved by giving freely will soon be hated for what he must take back. The reactive man with the open hand operates from a simple internal logic. If I keep giving, I will eventually be recognized. Eventually, someone will see the depth of what I offer and return it in kind. Eventually, the world will reward the generous person the way stories say it should. It does not. Not automatically, not structurally, not without the strategic awareness that determines whether the giving is building something or simply draining someone. The strategic man with the measured hand operates from a different logic. What I give deliberately, not because I am cold, but because my resources are finite. My time is finite. My energy is finite. My attention is finite. And finite things given without discrimination disappear. When they are gone, I cannot give to the things and people that actually deserve them. Seneca saw this with the clarity of a Stoic who had studied both the giving and the receiving. He wrote in his letters to Lucilius, "Lay up a store of things which time cannot take away. Make the most of your time." He was not advising coldness. He was advising the understanding that time and attention and energy are the only real currencies, and currencies spent without awareness are currencies lost. The Roman Emperor Tiberius is the modern cautionary tale of the other extreme. Where Augustus had deployed generosity strategically, building loyalty through precisely targeted distributions of land, money, and status, Tiberius withdrew. Not strategically, reflexively, suspiciously. He gave nothing and trusted no one, and the loyalty that Augustus had built over decades dissolved in years. Tiberius was not strategically miserly, he was pathologically closed. And the closed hand, taken to that extreme, is as destructive as the perpetually open one. The lesson is not close your hand. The lesson is choose when to open it and know what the opening builds every time you do. In the modern world, Spotify. When Spotify launched, it gave music away for free, a gift so radical that the entire industry reacted with alarm. But the gift was not indiscriminate. It was architected. The free tier was designed to create a behavioral pattern of daily music consumption that would, over time, become so integrated into the user's life that the paid tier felt less like a purchase and more like protecting something they already had. The open hand was a conversion mechanism. The generosity was strategic from the first day. They did not open their hand because they could not close it. They opened it because they understood exactly what opening it built. What are you building every time you open yours? But the open hand is only the external symptom. The deeper mechanism, the one that operates underneath the compulsive giver's awareness, is about something Machiavelli called the architecture of debt. And it is the most powerful thing in this entire video. Drop open hand, measured heart in the comments for the people learning to give with intelligence. Machiavelli speaks, "The prince who conserves his resources can be generous when it truly counts, especially in defense or crisis. Sustainability beats sentiment every time. The person who exhausts themselves in ordinary times has nothing left for the extraordinary moment. Guard the reserve. The reserve is not selfishness. It is the precondition of every significant act of giving you will ever be capable of." Law 3. The debt architecture. Here is the thing about favors. They do not disappear. They do not expire. They do not evaporate into goodwill and good feelings and the warm memory of being helped. They accumulate silently in the space between two people as an invisible ledger that both parties feel, even if only one of them is aware of keeping it. The person who understands this does not just give kindness, they build architecture. Every favor creates a gravitational pull between giver and receiver. The receiver feels it as gratitude in the short term, as obligation in the medium term, as a subtle but persistent weight in the long term, the awareness, barely conscious, that something is owed. The reactive man gives favors and feels good about them. He does not think about what they create. He does not map the ledger. He disperses kindness the way rain disperses, indiscriminately, without pattern, landing on deserving and undeserving ground with equal force. He is liked. He is used. He is rarely in a position of real leverage. The strategic man gives favors with full awareness of what they create. He is not calculating in the cold transactional sense. He is conscious. He knows that every favor is a link in a chain, and that chains, assembled correctly, become something structurally powerful. He gives deliberately to people whose reciprocity he values, at moments when the giving lands with the most weight, in forms that create the most durable sense of obligation, not through manipulation, but through the genuine delivery of something that matters. Apply this to two contexts. In social dynamics, the person who helps you move apartments creates more obligation than the person who likes your posts, not because the favor is transactional, but because the cost to the giver was real and visible, and the receiver knows it. The depth of the debt is proportional to the visible cost of the kindness. Small, cheap, effortless favors build shallow obligation. Costly, visible, specific favors build deep structural loyalty. In financial decisions, the investor who arrives first, who extends resources before the outcome is certain, before the proof is visible, before anyone else has taken the risk, creates a different relationship with the recipient than the one who arrives after success is assured. The early believer is owed something that cannot be fully repaid. Not money, the specific debt of having been trusted before it was safe to trust. That debt does not expire.
Now, the historical example. Lorenzo de' Medici, Il Magnifico, the most powerful man in Renaissance Florence, did not maintain his position through military force. Florence had no standing army worth speaking of. He maintained it through the most sophisticated favor architecture in Italian history. He was patron to artists, poets, architects, and philosophers. He gave generously to the church, to the guilds, to the families whose commercial interests intersected with his political ones. He remembered names. He attended weddings and funerals. He made people feel seen, specifically, individually, with the precision of someone who understood that the feeling of being seen creates the most durable debt available in human psychology. And when his position was threatened, when the Pazzi conspiracy attempted to assassinate him in the Duomo itself in 1478, the city of Florence did not remain neutral. It rose, not from contractual obligation, from the accumulated weight of 1,000 invisible debts that his generosity had built over decades. He did not fight for his position that day. The architecture he had built over years fought for him. That is not luck. That is the compound interest of strategic kindness. Modern equivalent, Netflix in 2013. When Netflix made the decision to release the entire first season of House of Cards at once, all 13 episodes simultaneously, the industry called it reckless. "You are giving away your leverage," they said. "You will have nothing left to retain subscribers." Netflix understood something the industry did not. The act of giving everything at once created a different kind of debt, the debt of immersion, of investment, of having given 12 hours of your attention to something that now felt like yours. The viewer who watched the full season was not a passive consumer. They were an invested one, and invested people return. The gift created the architecture. The architecture created the loyalty. Are you building architecture with what you give, or are you simply distributing goodwill without understanding what you are constructing? The answer to that question determines whether your kindness serves you or simply drains you.
But there is a darker use of this architecture, one that operates in the hands of people who are not building genuine relationships, but building cages. And that is what Law 4 is about. Drop "the debt is real" in the comments. Machiavelli speaks, "Benefits should be conferred gradually so that they may be better enjoyed. Not all at once, not reflexively, gradually so that each benefit is felt, valued, and integrated before the next arrives. This is not manipulation. This is the intelligence of a giver who understands that the experience of receiving shapes the loyalty that receiving produces." Law 4. Pity as a weapon. Not all kindness comes from strength. Some of it comes from a carefully constructed weakness, a wound displayed with perfect timing, a vulnerability offered not from genuine openness, but from the precise understanding that visible suffering creates in the witness a compulsion to help. This is pity as a weapon, and it is the most underestimated instrument in the arsenal of manipulation. The reactive man receives pity the way he receives everything else, with his guard open and his feelings in front. Someone shows him their wound. He feels it as his own. He responds from the genuine, instinctive desire of someone who cannot bear witness to suffering without attempting to relieve it. He is being played. Not always, not by everyone, but often enough that the pattern costs him. The strategic man sees the wound and asks a different question before responding. Is this a wound being shown to me or shown at me? Is this genuine suffering asking for genuine care, or is this a display calibrated to produce a response that serves the displayer? He does not become cold, he becomes precise. He learns to distinguish between the person who reveals a wound because they trust him enough to be vulnerable, and the person who reveals a wound because they have learned that wounds produce resources from people who cannot separate feeling from strategy. Apply this to two contexts. In relationships, the partner who cries at the precise moment a boundary is being set. The friend who becomes visibly fragile exactly when you are considering withdrawing from a pattern that has been taking from you. The family member whose health crisis arrives whenever you are close to leaving an arrangement that serves them more than you. Not always, not inevitably, but with enough frequency that the pattern deserves to be named and examined rather than reflexively responded to. At work, the colleague who is always on the edge of overwhelm, who regularly communicates their struggle in ways that invite others to absorb their workload. Not because they are incapable, because they have discovered that visible distress is more effective at redistributing labor than formal requests. Their kindness trap is subtle. They make you feel unkind for not helping, when the more precise observation is that your help has been consistently funding their comfort at the cost of your capacity. Now, the historical example. Cesare Borgia, Machiavelli's most studied subject, was a master of the strategic display of mercy. After he appointed the brutal administrator Ramiro de Orco to pacify the Romagna through methods so harsh that the population's hatred had reached a dangerous pitch, Borgia made a precise calculation. He had de Orco publicly executed. The body was displayed in the town square, cut in two with a bloody knife beside it. The people of the Romagna were shocked, and then almost immediately grateful. Borgia had appeared to respond to their suffering. He had appeared to hear their pain and act in their defense. He had deployed the display of justice as mercy at the exact moment it would produce the maximum transfer of loyalty from the population to himself. He had not changed. He had staged the appearance of change. And the appearance produced real political outcomes that the reality of being Cesare Borgia alone could never have manufactured. That is pity as a political instrument. Cold, precise, effective. Modern equivalent. The most sophisticated fundraising operations in the world do not show you statistics. They show you one child, one face, one story. not because the statistics are less true, but because the human brain does not respond to scale. It responds to individual suffering with a force that systemic suffering cannot trigger. The single visible wound produces more resources than the invisible million. This is not necessarily cynical. Sometimes the wound is genuine, and the display is honest, and the resources produced go exactly where they should. But the mechanism works regardless of the intentions behind it. And the person who does not understand the mechanism will be moved by it in situations where the wound is real and in situations where it is staged with equal force and no ability to distinguish between them. How do you develop the precision to tell the difference? You learn to ask not just, is this person suffering, but what does my response to this suffering produce for them? And is that production proportional to what it costs me? Genuine suffering deserves genuine care. Strategic suffering deserves strategic response. But knowing the difference and choosing accordingly is precisely what Law 5 is about. Because the most dangerous form of this trap is not the person who uses your kindness against you. It is the part of you that uses kindness against yourself. Drop "I know the difference" in the comments if you're learning to read the wound. Machiavelli speaks, "Men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that a deceiver will never lack victims." Immediate need is a lever. The person who presents an immediate need, real or constructed, activates a response mechanism in the observer that bypasses rational evaluation. The strategic person does not eliminate their compassion. They slow it down, enough to ask the question before the response. That pause is the difference. Law 5. The person who cannot stop giving. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that good people carry. It is not the exhaustion of overwork. It is the exhaustion of self-abandonment, of having distributed yourself so completely to other people's needs that when you finally look inward, there is almost nothing left that is yours. You gave it away, piece by piece, call by call, favor by favor, always available, always responsive, always the one who shows up. And the showing up became the expectation, and the expectation became the demand, and the demand became invisible, because demands do not look like demands when they arrive in the form of someone who simply needs you. This is the trap of the compulsive giver, and it is the cruelest one, because it is entirely self-constructed. The reactive person cannot tolerate the discomfort of withholding. They feel the pull of someone's need, real or implied, and they respond before they have asked whether the response serves the larger picture. They have confused availability with love, compliance with care, the absence of limits with the presence of virtue. They are running on the fumes of a self they stopped protecting years ago. The strategic person understands a counterintuitive truth that most people spend decades resisting. You cannot give from empty, not sustainably, not in a way that builds something durable. The most generous people in history were not the ones who gave without replenishment. They were the ones who understood that the capacity to give required the discipline to preserve. Apply this to two contexts. In money and financial decisions, the person who cannot say no to financial requests from family and friends, who loans, gifts, covers, absorbs, does not become wealthy through generosity. They become the financial infrastructure of people who never developed their own. And when their own crisis arrives, the infrastructure they spent years funding is not available to them because infrastructure does not feel obligation the way individuals do. It simply expects what it has always received. In online behavior and social dynamics, the person who responds to every comment, every message, every demand for their attention, who is publicly, visibly, continuously available, trains their audience to treat their presence as a utility. Utilities are not valued, they are used.
The creator who disappears, who makes their return an event rather than a default, creates a different relationship between their audience and their work. Scarcity is not a manipulation tactic. It is the natural result of understanding that attention, like all finite resources, carries a price that availability eliminates.
Now, the historical example. Machiavelli himself, in exile from Florence after 1513, stripped of his position, his income, his access to the political world he had devoted his life to serving, he had every reason to beg, to write flattering letters, to give whatever remained of his dignity in exchange for the reinstatement he desperately wanted. He did not. He wrote The Prince, but not as the supplication it is sometimes misread as. He wrote it from a position of philosophical integrity. He preserved the quality of his analysis even when preservation cost him the approval of the very people he was addressing. He gave the world the precise, uncomfortable truth, instead of the palatable version that might have earned him his position back sooner. That restraint, the refusal to give away the quality of his mind in exchange for immediate comfort, is what made the Prince last 5 centuries, and what made every diluted, flattering version of the same ideas disappear. He did not stop giving. He stopped giving cheaply. Modern equivalent. Steve Jobs returning to Apple in 1997. Apple was days from bankruptcy. The instinct of the compulsive giver, the leader who cannot tolerate others' suffering, would have been to say yes to everything, to every product line, every partnership, every licensing deal that offered immediate revenue. Jobs did the opposite. He eliminated 70% of Apple's product line. He said no with a ferocity that the board found terrifying. He gave Apple back its scarcity, its identity, its focus, its refusal to be all things to all people. The discipline to withhold was the act of generosity that saved the company. Ask yourself this, not as a judge, as a mentor. How much of what you give is genuine care, and how much of it is the avoidance of the discomfort of someone's disappointment? How much of your generosity is a gift, and how much of it is a reflex that you have not yet had the courage to examine? The answer to that question is the beginning of a different kind of giving, one that comes from fullness rather than fear. But before you can give from fullness, you need to understand how to read the rooms where kindness is being used against you. That is Law 6. Drop "I give from fullness now" in the comments for the people making that transition. Machiavelli speaks. A prince must not mind being called cruel when it is necessary to maintain order. Mercy badly exercised brings disorder and harm. Mercy to the wrong things, including your own compulsion to please, produces disorder. The cruelty of the limit is not unkindness. It is the highest form of care available to the person who has finally understood what unlimited availability costs.
Law 6. How to read a kind room. Kindness arrives in many forms. Not all of them serve you. Some kindness is genuine, given freely without architecture from a person whose interest in your well-being is real and uncalculated. This kindness is rare. It is also unmistakable to the person who has learned to read the difference. Some kindness is strategic, deployed with precision, timed with awareness, offered in the form that produces the most durable obligation or the most useful perception. This is not evil. This is intelligence, and understanding it does not make you cynical. It makes you equipped. Some kindness is predatory, designed to create a dependency, to lower a defense, to produce in the receiver a state of lowered vigilance that makes them susceptible to something they would have resisted if the warmth had not arrived first. The reactive man receives kindness with gratitude and responds with openness. This is admirable in rooms that have earned it. In rooms that have not, it is the strategic miscalculation of a person who is applying trust room behavior to rooms that are not safe. The strategic man receives kindness with attention. He does not reject it. He does not become suspicious of every generous gesture. He reads it the way a skilled reader reads a text between the lines. He asks, what does this kindness cost the giver?
What does it create between us? What does the timing of it tell me about what is being sought? Apply this to two contexts. In workplace dynamics, the manager who suddenly becomes warm, who begins inviting you to lunch, who remembers your preferences, who makes you feel seen and valued in the weeks before a request that will require something significant from you. The warmth is not false, but it is timed, and the timing is information. The person who reads the timing appreciates the kindness and enters the subsequent conversation with full awareness of the dynamic it was designed to create. In relationships and social dynamics, the friend who becomes most attentive when they need something, whose calls increase in frequency as their own need approaches. This is not necessarily cynical. People often open up when they are in need, and the opening can be genuine alongside the need. But the pattern, need following attention, is information, and information, received clearly, allows you to respond from choice rather than from the momentum of accumulated warmth. The historical example. Sun Tzu wrote, "Appear weak when you are strong, and strong when you are weak." This is typically read as advice to the strategist, but it is equally a warning to the observed, the person on whom this strategy is being deployed. The general who sends gifts before an ambush, the diplomat who offers warmth before a demand, the negotiator who builds rapport across 3 conversations before arriving at the 4th, where the real purpose of the warmth is finally revealed. In every case, the kindness is real in the moment of its giving, and the strategic purpose behind it is equally real. Both can be true simultaneously. And the person who receives the kindness without reading the strategy is the person who walks into the 4th conversation unprepared. Modern equivalent: pharmaceutical companies that provide free samples. The sample is genuinely useful. The medication may genuinely help. The relationship established through the gift of free access is also genuinely designed to create a prescribing pattern that persists long after the sample has been forgotten. The doctor who receives the gift without reading the gift's architecture is less free in their subsequent prescribing decisions than the one who receives it with full awareness of what the gift is building. The awareness does not require rejection, it requires clarity. Here is the question that changes how you read every room. Not, "Why are they being kind to me?" but "What does this kindness create between us? And is what it creates something I would choose if I were choosing consciously?" Most of the time, the answer is yes. Most kindness, even strategic kindness, creates something worth being created. But the person who never asks the question has no choice in the matter. They receive what the giver creates and call it fortune. The person who reads the room chooses what they accept into the architecture of their life. But reading kind rooms is only defensive intelligence. The real power, the kind that builds rather than simply protects, lives in understanding what real kindness looks like when it is deployed from genuine strength. That is Law 7. Drop "I read the room" in the comments for the people learning to see what the warmth is building. Machiavelli speaks, "Men are so simple and so subject to present necessities that he who seeks to deceive will always find someone who will allow themselves to be deceived. The one who allows themselves to be deceived is not stupid, they are untrained. They have not been given the vocabulary for the thing happening to them. You now have the vocabulary. The question is whether you will use it."
Law 7. Kindness versus performed kindness. There is a kindness that makes you feel good, and there is a kindness that makes you better. These two things are not the same, and confusing them is one of the most expensive mistakes available to a person who genuinely wants to serve the people they care about.
The reactive person confuses kindness with comfort. They want the people around them to feel good, immediately, visibly, in the moment. They soften difficult truths. They withhold uncomfortable feedback. They absorb the consequences of other people's poor decisions so that those people do not have to feel the weight of those decisions themselves. They call this care. Machiavelli would call it cowardice dressed as compassion. The strategic person understands that real kindness is frequently uncomfortable to receive. It says the thing the person needs to hear rather than the thing they want to hear. It holds the standard rather than lowering it to eliminate the friction. It refuses to absorb consequences that belong to someone else, because absorbing them prevents those consequences from teaching what they were designed to teach. Real kindness respects the other person enough to tell them the truth. Apply this across two contexts. At work, the manager who gives honest performance feedback, who names the specific gap between where the person is and where they could be, is less immediately comfortable than the one who praises everything. But the person who receives honest feedback is equipped to develop. The person who receives only praise is not being cared for, they are being managed. Their potential is being sacrificed on the altar of the manager's discomfort with conflict. In relationships, the friend who tells you that the business plan has a fatal flaw, that the relationship dynamic you are describing is one you have described 3 times before 3 different people, that the pattern you are asking them to validate is the pattern that has been costing you. This friend is less comfortable to have than the one who agrees with everything. They are also the only one in the room who is actually serving you. Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor, Stoic philosopher, and the clearest embodiment of real kindness in ancient leadership, did not govern through warmth alone. He governed through the rigorous application of principle to every decision, regardless of the personal cost. He wrote in Meditations, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." He was not cold. The Meditations are among the most humanly compassionate texts in the ancient record, but his compassion was never deployed at the expense of truth. He held both, the warmth and the standard, simultaneously, and it was the standard that made the warmth meaningful. Without the standard, warmth is just approval, and approval, as Machiavelli would confirm, is the cheapest currency in any room. Modern equivalent, Ray Dalio and the Culture at Bridgewater. Radical transparency, the practice of delivering and receiving honest, direct feedback regardless of seniority, is genuinely uncomfortable. Many people who join Bridgewater leave within the first year, unable to tolerate the friction of being told the precise truth about their performance and their thinking. The ones who stay become some of the most analytically developed professionals in the industry, because real kindness, the kind that serves the person rather than the interaction, builds capacity. It does not simply create comfort. The question is not, am I being kind? The question is my kindness making the person I am giving it to more capable, more clear, more equipped to handle what their life requires? If the answer is no, you are not being kind, you are being comfortable. And comfortable is not the same as caring, not even close. Drop real kindness over comfort in the comments. Machiavelli speaks, "Princes ought not to complain of faults committed by the people subject to them, since they may be attributed to their own negligence or bad precepts. The leader who creates weakness in others through undisciplined kindness is not absolved by the warmth of their intention. Intent without discernment is not virtue. It is the refusal to accept the responsibility that comes with the capacity to give." Law 8. Mercy without weakness. Every position of power eventually faces the same test. The moment when being kind costs you something real. When mercy requires sacrifice. When the compassionate response is also the strategically dangerous one. In that moment, and only in that moment, the true quality of your kindness is revealed. Not in the easy gifts, not in the comfortable warmth, in the decision made when giving something away puts something else at risk. This is Law 8, and it is the law that separates the person who performs kindness from the person who has built it into their architecture of strength.
The reactive person in this moment chooses kindness reflexively because they cannot tolerate the feeling of having chosen otherwise. They grant the mercy, make the concession, soften the consequence, and feel the brief relief of having avoided the discomfort. But the relief is followed by a different discomfort, the awareness that what they gave was taken, not received, and that the pattern will repeat. The strategic person in this moment chooses kindness deliberately from the full awareness of what the mercy costs and what it creates. They grant it when the granting builds something durable. They withhold it when the granting would simply fund a dynamic that serves no one. The mercy is the same action. The intelligence behind it is entirely different. Apply this across two contexts. In financial decisions, the investor who extends a second chance to a struggling entrepreneur, not from sentimentality, but from the strategic assessment that the entrepreneur's failure is a timing issue, not a character one, is deploying mercy as long-term intelligence. The investor who extends the same mercy to the entrepreneur whose pattern is undisciplined regardless of conditions is deploying mercy as emotional avoidance. Same action, different intelligence, different outcomes. In social dynamics and leadership, the leader who publicly defends a team member who has made a recoverable mistake, who absorbs some of the institutional pressure rather than deflecting it entirely onto the individual, builds a specific kind of loyalty that no performance bonus can purchase. The cost is real. The loyalty it creates is durable. That is mercy as strategic investment.
Nelson Mandela, 27 years of imprisonment. The capacity for bitterness was not only understandable, it was justified. And yet, when he emerged from Robben Island and assumed the presidency of South Africa, he chose a different architecture. He chose a truth and reconciliation process rather than the retributive justice that the historical moment would have supported. This was not weakness. This was the most precise strategic calculation available to him. He understood that a nation rebuilt on retribution would spend its next generation managing the resentment of those who had been punished, that the energy of rebuilding would be consumed by the architecture of blame, and that the mercy, costly, genuinely costly, was the only instrument capable of building something that would outlast the urgency of the moment. He was not kind because he could not be ruthless. He was kind because he understood that in this specific situation, at this specific scale, mercy was the most ruthless instrument available. That is the full integration of this series. Appear good, be ruthless, know when they are the same action. Modern equivalent. Satya Nadella inheriting Microsoft in 2014. The company was internally fractured by decades of stack-ranking culture, a system where employees were graded on a forced curve, creating an environment of internal competition that destroyed collaboration. The ruthless path would have been to keep the competition and push harder. Nadella chose mercy. He eliminated stack ranking, introduced a growth mindset culture, repositioned the company's identity from know-it-alls to learn-it-alls. The mercy was not sentiment, it was the precise diagnosis of what the company's illness required to heal. Microsoft's market capitalization grew tenfold in the decade that followed. Real mercy, deployed with real intelligence, is not the opposite of power. It is one of its highest expressions. Drop mercy from strength in the comments. Machiavelli speaks, "A prince ought to show himself a patron of ability and should honor those who excel in every art. He ought to encourage his citizens to practice their callings peacefully, and he should reward those who wish to do so. The patron who rewards excellence, specifically, visibly, with real resources, deploys kindness as a signal to the entire room of what is valued. The signal shapes behavior more powerfully than any rule."
Law 9. What you leave behind. Every empire ends, not slowly, not gracefully, not in the way the builder imagined. Empires end in the way all things end, on their own timeline, by their own internal logic, with the indifference of history toward the feelings of the person who built them. Alexander the Great conquered more territory in 12 years than most rulers accumulate in a lifetime. He was 32 years old when he died. He had built an empire that stretched from Greece to the borders of India. He left no system, no institutions, no durable architecture for what he had built. The empire fractured within a generation into warring successor states, each claiming his legacy and none preserving it. Marcus Aurelius conquered nothing. He spent his reign defending territory rather than expanding it, fighting wars he had not sought and would not have chosen. He died at 58 at a military encampment, far from the Rome he had governed for 19 years. His words are still read 2,000 years later by people who will never know his empire's borders, but who return again and again to the precision of his thinking about how to be human in a world that does not accommodate human weakness. One man conquered the world and left almost nothing that lasted. One man governed a corner of it and left something that survived every empire that came after. The difference was not capability. It was the question each of them was trying to answer with their life. Alexander was trying to answer, "How far can I go?" Marcus was trying to answer, "What is worth doing?" This is Law 9, and it is not about kindness in the conventional sense. It is about the kindness you show the future, the people who will live in the world your choices help construct. The reactive person lives inside the immediate feedback loop. They give to feel the giving. They build to see the building. They measure their worth by what they can point to in the present. The followers, the revenue, the visible markers of a life being lived at a certain level. They are not wrong, but they are incomplete. The strategic person lives inside two time frames simultaneously. The immediate, where decisions are made, where effort is deployed, where the daily work of building happens, and the long, where the meaning of those decisions is finally legible, where what you actually built becomes visible, not the impressions, the revenue, the followers, the thing that remains after all of those disappear. Apply this across two contexts. In every domain, money, relationships, self-mastery, the money you make by genuinely developing your capacity is worth more than the money you make by appearing to have it. Not because of the amount, because of what building genuine capacity creates in you. The person who emerges from that discipline is capable of building again if the first thing disappears. The person who accumulated without developing is not. The relationship built on genuine honesty and real mutual investment, uncomfortable to build, costly to maintain, lasts in a way that the relationship built on performed warmth and strategic avoidance never does. Because genuine relationships leave something in both people. They change the architecture of who you are, and that change is what you carry forward when the relationship itself changes. The historical example is the one this series has been circling for 10 episodes. Niccolo Machiavelli died in 1527. He died without the political rehabilitation he spent his last years seeking. He was never reinstated to the Florence he had served. He was never given back the position he had lost. He left the prince. He left the discourses on Livy. He left the Florentine histories and the art of war. He left a body of thinking about power, human nature, and the mechanics of political reality that has been studied continuously for 5 centuries by rulers, by generals, by philosophers, by every person who has ever tried to understand why rooms work the way they work. He lost the immediate. He left the permanent. What he gave the world was not comfortable. It was not what the world asked for. It was the precise, uncomfortable, strategically intelligent truth, delivered in the forms that have proven most durable.
That is the legacy of a man who understood, eventually, that the kindness you owe the future is honesty about the present. So, what is the kindness you are building that will outlast you? Not the followers, not the revenue, not the position. The thing that if every visible marker disappeared tomorrow would still be standing because it was built from something real. That is the question this series has been building toward. Not how do you win, but what are you building that is worth the winning? The previous episode, Appear Good, Be Ruthless, showed you the surface of the game. This one showed you the depth of it. Go back and watch it with these laws in mind. The mask looks different when you understand what it was always supposed to be protecting. And if this series changed how you see the rooms you walk into, share it. Not broadly, specifically. One person. The person in your life who gives the most and understands the least about what their giving is building. Send them episode 1. Let them walk the ark. They will arrive here, equipped. Drop "I build for what lasts" in the comments. The final declaration of 9 laws earned. Progress over perfection. Kindness is not a virtue, not alone, not without intelligence behind it, not without the awareness of what it creates, who it serves, and what it costs. Kindness with intelligence is the most durable instrument available to a person who has decided to build something real. That is what Machiavelli knew. That is what he spent 44 years watching people discover too late. Now you know it before too late arrives. That is the victory loop.